Hello, and welcome to my session on data analysis with Azure Databricks and Synapse. In the discussion, there is a link for a poll, and I'm really interested in knowing what your answers would be to the questions that I have posted here. This is, pretty live, so as soon as you are able to, I'll start seeing some movement on the poll, and I'm really interested in seeing what you're doing now. Oh, great, somebody answered. It's because I want to make sure that I target towards whoever is whoever is attending today. Also, I wanted to know that this is not meant to be a really deep dive technical discussion into either of the two. We're going to be talking about the differences. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the questions section, and I will be answering them during the presentation and at the end. Rodney Kidd, my moderator, and I are going to be talking at the end and really looking forward to answering all your questions. So please ask away. So like I said, today we're going to be talking all about Azure Synapse and Databricks. I talk about Synapse quite a bit, and every time I do, there's always questions about what should I use? Which one does what better? And I've seen also a lot of questions about this at various Microsoft events on Synapse that I have attended as well. So I know it's a really hot topic, and I hope to be able to answer this question for you so that you know not the, oh, you should always do this because it's a Microsoft product, but you figure out which is the best tool for your environment, given what you're doing and the kind of data that you are going to be analyzed. So, because of course, since I am a consultant, the answer is always, of course, it depends, but I will give you the reasons as to why. All right. Wanted to basically, I'm sure that you'll have seen these slides quite a bit today. Make sure that you explore everything that PASS has to offer. If you are interested in learning more about Synapse, I do have a class in the PASS Pro function or website that allows you, where I do a study on Synapse, so you can take that class and learn a lot more about it. I'm a big promoter of the users group. I am the chapter leader for the Arizona Data Platform users group, when we meet every second Wednesday, and we're on Meetup if you want to show up. We're all virtual now. SQL Saturdays, great events. I know that I've signed up for Minneapolis, so looking forward to speaking at that. And there are a number of other resources that you can check out on PASS, so go to pass.org for that. All right, these session evaluations. Hey, these are important. Since I can't get to see you this year, which is so rough, I really want to get your feedback. Always interested in becoming a better speaker, especially in this kind of, a home environment. And I'd really loved your feedback. And there are prizes available for the people who provide them. So please do. So a little bit about me. My name is Ginger Grant. I am the principal consultant of my own consulting company, Desert Isle Group. What we try to do is work with clients to answer questions that they have about data. I am a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. And I have a blog at Desert Isle SQL. And if you are interested in connecting more on Twitter, really would hope that you'd reach out. I'm on there way too much at Desert Isle SQL. All right, a little bit about today's agenda. So we're going to be talking all about the differences and the similarities between Azure Synapse and Azure Databricks. We're going to look at what each individual product does. We're going to be diving into the differences and matching the similarities and factions to use case. Let me go back to the poll here real quick and see what it ended up with. All right, so looks like a lot of people aren't too familiar with either one of them, but I'm looking to figure it out. Interestingly enough, I thought that there would have been more people that were using Databricks than Synapse. So I guess that's very interesting to me. Thank you everybody for participating in the poll. All right. So let's talk about the two of them, Azure Databricks and Azure Synapse. They were both designed to be cloud scalable solutions for analyzing and processing Apache Spark clusters or compute. Spark is obviously the hot new thing. If you are either way, either tool that you are looking at, I highly recommend that you start learning Spark, because there are so many applications that are have implemented this technology as a way to process data very, very quickly. The reason why Spark is used so much is that it is an implementation of Hadoop, which has been optimized to process and scale by separating the data from compute and running massively multi-processed applications across a whole bunch of computers. So if you want to make it go faster, select a different compute. And with both these products, that's a click of the button to make your stuff go faster by picking a faster computer for it to run on. It was originally created to help win a contest and was designed at UC Berkeley in 2010. And they the contest was for picking the best movies on Netflix. They lost, and we got Spark, so we all win. And one of the people who had developed Apache Spark in the open source environment decided, we know we could make it better, probably make some money. Let's do this again. And they went and 80% of the code that was written for Apache Spark was used to do Databricks. And Matej Zachariah is the CTO of Databricks, and he was on the original product. So they're both designed to use Apache Spark and analyze data and separate it from compute and do multiprocessing. And they both are use workflows to get this done, because both products are designed to take raw data, to do some ETL to it or transform it for other various tasks. I know that there are people now who write all of their ETL in Python, and you can do that in either product. Both is perfectly acceptable place to do that if that's what you wish to do. But it's not just Python. Both of them support other languages as well. It's designed not only to do machine learning, but also there's a bit of a data warehousing component in one of them, obviously a little bit more in Azure Synapse. We'll talk about that. But the idea is that they were both designed to process really large amounts of data, because when you get to, terabytes of compute, it's really difficult to do that with a single server. And also with machine learning tasks, which both are optimized for, there are times that you need just to throw all the resources of a data source at a problem to get an answer in a reasonable period of time. And other times you don't need that. So you want to scale back. One thing that both products do that I find really awesome is they both turn themselves off. So with either product, if you accidentally leave it on, you're safe. It won't run up your Azure bill over the weekend, which is really great. Both use multiple languages to analyze data. I mentioned Python because it's what I use, and it's arguably the most popular language that they support. But they also support other languages so you can write Spark in those languages as well. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the similarities between the two. So both of them have a shared feature set. They both use Apache open source Spark, sort of. In addition to supporting everything that Apache open source supports, Databricks has added some additional features. But of the features that are most utilized or most talked about with Spark, the first one is Delta Lake. And Delta Lake is a way of organizing your data lake in a new application that allows it to act more like a database. And they both support this feature functionality. With Delta Lake, you can enforce schema. So in a data lake environment, generally speaking, what you have is called schema on read. And that is the opposite of what you might have in SQL Server, where you write the schema and then you put the data within it. With a data lake environment, you put the data out there, and then later on you come back and you say, oh, I want these columns and this is the data type. And so that's schema on read. With Delta Lake, they noticed a problem that is common that, let's say, for example, that you are ingesting streaming data into your data lake and you have a bunch of water meters that are transmitting the use of the data every 4 hours. Every 4 hours, you get a new water metric usage for each person. Well, and this actually did happen. So this is why I use this example, because I was in a place where this was part what happened with the data. We got a new model of smart water meter, and the old model gave us 10 columns, and the new model gave us 14 columns. The data does not include headers. So if you just go randomly throwing all that stuff into a data lake, then you're like, what are these other columns? And you may, in some cases, wait years to go look at it because, people don't necessarily need it, but then they really do. So with a Delta Lake, what you can do is you can say, this is the schema that I expect. And then you can choose what you're going to do with the data that doesn't follow the schema that you expect. You can write it to the side, you can throw it out, but either way, you've got a way of sorting the data from good and bad. The other thing that you can do with Delta Lake is it has included what they like to call time travel, but those of us who use databases would call transaction logging. So if you want to know what was the data lake was like, say, last week, you can go find that out. So Delta Lake is a very popular structure. It also includes ACID transactions so that you can ensure that you have the whole transaction and you're not missing any record. So it's getting to be used quite often with people who are building data lakes, so that you have a little bit more structure than the free-for-all that is a data lake. And it provides in a little indexing too. So you've got some database features being added to it. And with those features, it performs a lot better when you're doing queries. Not as good as a database, but better than a fly file. Both also include Anaconda. Anaconda is the largest set of libraries that are used for Python. And if you include Anaconda, that means that you do not have to load a whole bunch of stuff into the environment, because most of what you need with Python is all there. You have Anaconda, you have just about anything you need. They both rely on notebooks. If you haven't started using notebooks and learning Markdown language, now's the time. Not only is it used in both products, but it's also used now in SQL. So if you haven't started using Azure Data Studio and using notebooks, you should, because it's the way I think development is going, because it provides the ability for you to annotate your code and see the results all in one place. Great tool. They both use it. Since I'm talking here not generically about Databricks, but I'm talking specifically about Azure Databricks, because that's a more true comparison. They both have Active Directory integration. So you have the same Azure security that you would have available to you in either product, with the associate rights that you can do. For example, adding batches of users and groups, group administration policies, etc. Both offer some Azure ML support, the degree of which, of course, varies a little bit. And both can be used for batch or streaming. So if you are streaming data to into your environment, both of them will support it using a little bit different applications and logic. But if you have streaming data come in, both of them can process them in near real time. So let's talk a little bit more about Synapse. So Synapse was reduced in November of 2019. As a matter of fact, it was 2 days before Past Summit started, where they first announced the release of Azure Synapse. Now, I will say that I'm being a little bit informal. The official product name is Azure Synapse Analytics, but I think this looks better in a header. The original release that was talked about last year at Past Summit, so if you attended, you might have heard about it then. It was all about data warehouse, because Azure Synapse, which was released at right around Past Summit last year, was replacing the SQL data warehouse with Azure Synapse. And a lot of people went to Summit, heard that, and now we're back at Summit going, wait a minute, this is that warehouse thing? What are you talking about Spark for? Well, it includes, of course, data warehousing, but in March of 2020, right before COVID, they released the Spark components to it. So it contains more than just Spark. And it's built entirely upon an Azure Data Lake Gen 2. When you create a Synapse environment, either you create a new Azure Data Lake Gen 2, or you incorporate one that you already have. Either way, if you're doing Synapse, you're doing Azure Data Lake. And it contains not only, the Spark component that is part of Databricks, but it contains 3 different ways that you can process your data. So you can process your data using an implementation of Azure Data Factory. So if you are using Azure Data Factory now and you're looking at Microsoft's documentation, you may notice that in the documentation at the little top, it says, for Azure Synapse or for Azure Data Factory. And the reason that it says that is it's the same code. So if you have created or you are familiar with Azure Data Factory and you've got some pipelines, great, you already know some of Synapse, yay you. What Synapse incorporates on top of that is the ability to incorporate any of your Spark jobs or any of your notebooks as part of your pipeline by just dragging them onto the pipeline as well. So it includes all the data connectivity and everything that Azure Data Factory has. And in addition, there's more. And I said 3 ways, that's one. The next way you can process your data is that Synapse includes T-SQL on top of your data lake. What that means is you have the ability to query your data lake as if it was a database. Yes, you do have to structure it a little bit for that because you need to put your columns on top of it, put the schema on read. You can also directly connect to a Cosmos DB database. And I've been working a little bit with a product team, and they said to watch the announcements soon because they're going to have direct integration with other Azure database projects. Guess which one that probably is in the very near future. So you can integrate that directly into Synapse as well. So you can write T-SQL and take a look at your data and analyze it within there. But because we're talking about a Microsoft project, naturally Power BI is incorporated as well. And that is a third way you can work to process or evaluate your data by incorporating Power BI from within Synapse entirely. So those are 3 ways that it has to do it that are separate from what is in Databricks. So Databricks was added to Azure in March of 2020. And as you know, it is not a Microsoft product. It is a third-party product that is, the company is called Databricks, and it is run by, the technical head is Matej Zacharias. So he's the Bill Gates of Databricks, if you were. It is available in a number of different environments. You can also use it in Amazon. So if you have an AWS cloud and you may be using Databricks there, functionality is still the same, more or less. Obviously, the integration is a little different, but it's, like I said before, it was developed by the creators of Spark, and it is a Spark improvement. They've got a lot of metrics that they are throwing out about how much faster it is than open source Spark, which is what has been implemented within Synapse. And what that means, though, is that the code between the 2 of them, it's not 100%. So if you decided today, I'm going to flip the switch and I'm going to do everything that I'm doing in Databricks in Synapse, you might have to tweak your code a bit because it's not exactly the same. The one thing that Databricks brought to the Spark world that was one of the things that one of their big selling points is it has a managed team environment, which means that if Rodney and I were both working on a machine learning task, that we could share our notebooks together, as well as be included in different work groups where the environment is shared, the project is shared, and of course, everything would integrate to GitHub or Azure DevOps, whichever you choose. It's all built in. So let's talk about some of the feature differences between the 2. Obviously, they're different products. What do you get? What's the difference? So they're running different versions of Spark. Azure Synapse is running Spark 2.4 and Databricks is running 3.0. As active contributors into the Apache Spark open source project, Databricks does tend to get the latest very, very quickly. Azure Synapse being kind of new and they're working on a lot of different things. They've not yet implemented the latest version of Spark, although that is on the roadmap to be added relatively soon. One thing that is not yet in Azure Synapse either is source control. As I mentioned earlier, there is support in Databricks for both Azure DevOps and for GitHub. So your continuous integration, change delivery is not there within Synapse like it is in Databricks. Again, that's something that's on the roadmap, but we're talking today. There's no source control in Synapse. Something that I hope they have out very soon, but it's not there today. The other difference is in the compute. So within Synapse, all your compute is done versus pools, and in Databricks, they call them clusters. Well, functionally, they are the same, as in you can pick which underlying server, underlying computer that you use for powering either one of the tasks that you're using. The difference between the Databricks clusters and the pools, I will say that both of them are great because they both turn themselves off when not in use, and you can configure how long to keep it open before it goes turning anything off. So you're in control of that. By default in Synapse, it's 15 minutes. By default in Azure Databricks, it's 120 minutes. It takes for both of them about 4 minutes for Spark to restart once it from a cold start. But the difference that clusters has in Databricks, which is not in pools in Synapse, is the ability to use graphical processing units to have a higher level of compute. They both operate in a very multi-threaded environment. They both scale. You can turn both of those scaling capabilities on or off. And again, you pick the compute, so you're in charge of how much money is being spent for both of them. You are charged when the pool is in use, and not just for having one. They support different versions of SQL. Naturally, Synapse supports T-SQL, something I'm really happy about because you can do all the complicated, cool stuff. And the version of SQL that is in Databricks is, I think they call it SQLite. It's ANSI SQL. Since they implemented Spark 3.0, it is now fully compliant ANSI SQL versus T-SQL. The languages that are being supported in both of them within Spark are different too. Synapse does .NET. By .NET, though, I mean C#. So Ben Wiseman, of course, is very disappointed that Visual Basic is not supported, but C# is. So you can write C# with your Spark code and use the skills that your current team has to do that. You don't have to learn Python or Scala, although both support that. There is R support within Databricks for Spark, and that is not available within Synapse. The one thing that Databricks has that is really kind of nice is the ability to organize up your projects. So as you're creating a lot of machine learning functionality, or just a lot of different notebooks that do different things, within Databricks, you create project folders, you create projects so that you can include the different elements inside of them and you can find them. That's not there in Databricks, so you can end up with a very long list of notebooks and you have to figure out what goes to what. One thing about Databricks, again, it's been available within the Azure environment since 2018, and actually it was in AWS in 2017, so it's not terribly new. And Synapse is new. The features that I'm talking about regarding Spark are not even GA. So it is still a pre-release product, and I don't work for Microsoft, and I don't know when it's going to become generally available. I'm not sure that Microsoft knows yet because they're interested in providing a quality product that has the features that they know that they need. Couple things missing, like source control, that's not there yet. So there is no release date. So I am talking about a pre-released version. This gets kind of confusing if you're actually going into Azure, because you'd be like, there's two versions. There's a preview version, and then there's a release version, a GA version. The GA version of Azure Synapse is only the database functionality. So for ease of naming, because calling the data warehouse Azure Synapse and calling all of this Azure Synapse, I think is confusing. So I'm just going to call that a SQL pool. So the data warehousing components is generally available and has been for some time now. So that can make you pause and make the decision for you when it comes to, which should I use? What is my company going to be comfortable with? Don't let that newness set you off, though, because now I think it's the time to really start learning it, get on the ground floor, and then you would be in a better position to implement it when it is generally available. And I would imagine that we'll get more news about that, towards the end of this year, beginning of next year. All right, so let me go ahead and preview both projects for you so that you are familiar with what each one of them does and what it can do. Okay. So let me start by going to my Azure environment. And to create, I won't walk you through the steps for creating a Synapse workspace, but it's super easy. The only thing that I will caution you about when you're going to set it up is if you want to integrate your data lake that is included as part of Synapse with Power BI, make sure that you select the location of your data lake to be the same as the location of your Power BI tenant. That way you can do full integration of your data lake with Power BI. If your data lake is located in any other location than where your Power BI tenant is located, you won't be able to use that as a source. So keep that in mind. So when you have created, oh, by the way, when I go ahead and create this, it takes from anywhere from 8 to 20 minutes. So if you're looking to create your own environment, that's how long it takes to get it up there. So let's take a look at the Synapse environment. This is what is loaded when the environment, when you first start up. You'll notice here I've got several pools here. I have a built-in pool and a Synapse pool and a Spark pool. And you said, wait a minute, you called Synapse, you called data warehousing a SQL pool. What's it doing here? Well, that's because the built-in pool you don't create, so I don't count that one, which is why I call it. So let's actually get so that we start using it, which is here in Synapse Studio. So if I go ahead and click on this, it's going to open the Synapse environment. So this is using my Azure Active Directory logins. So since I'm logged in here, it'll log me in there. For those people who have multiple logins, you may need to clear out your cache if you have problems opening this up. So from within Synapse, we've got the home section, which is here. For the large numbers of people who have not yet familiarized themselves with Synapse, I highly recommend clicking on this Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center has a great place with a lot of code that you can use out of the box. So you can use these samples immediately to build different elements within Synapse, and you can see how the code works with working code. Really kind of a neat feature, and it's great that they are have created this environment. And you can also browse the gallery, and this gallery will get you working with data that is already open source. You don't have to add it to your data lake. So gives you a lot of things that you can look at and analyze out of the box. Some great samples to get you started with. Well, let's show you what I've got here. So one of the things that you have with Synapse, again, is you integrated your data with your data lake. So you can see here that I have two different workspaces here. I've got my databases that I've created here. This is my Azure GW, my SQL pool here. So this is where I could be managing my database that I have. Oops, I don't have it running, the pool running at the moment. And this is where you could do all of your SQL data warehousing. So if you've got over a terabyte of data, this is where you want to go to load that into an environment that people can access it for large scale data analysis. When this SQL, when the database was migrated to Synapse, there was a lot of features that were added to the former SQL DW. And what the features involved is separating your compute from your data so that you have the ability to scale up your compute whenever you want to. So if you want your data warehouse to run faster, that's easy enough. You just change the compute underneath it and tell it to use a new compute. And now all of a sudden you've got a much faster data warehouse, and you can change that back whenever you feel like it as well. So if I go here to linked, this shows me my data lake that I have linked to it. You can link as many link as many data lakes to your environment as you wish. By default, you always have one. And this is my data lake that I am integrated to this. I can go ahead and browse my data lake and take a look at my data that I've got what's inside it so that I can go ahead and browse it. So I'm going to go look at my DW data here. And I've got some files here. So let's take a look at these files. So I'm going to want to look at them within SQL. Naturally, who wouldn't, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a new SQL script, top rows. It's created my open row set query for me, and I can just go ahead and say run. So I can browse and examine all of the data that I have within my data lake without having to write any code. This is all, you know, as Will likes to say, clicky, clicky, draggy, draggy sort of coding. So you'll notice the headers aren't here. This is a function of what kind of data you have. If your data is JSON or your data is a file format called Parquet, it will know where your headers are. With comma separated or pipe delimited files, they get kind of confused. But you can always put a with statement in here and write it all up. So I have the ability to, of course, access any of my data and then query it. And I can also, of course, create a chart with it, just like that you might do with Azure Data Studio. So I can take a look at maybe doing a category and looking at the different products, etc. So, you know, looking just another way of looking at the data. And I can also save my image, or I can export the results. Frankly, I don't know why you do that, because that's what Azure Data Explorer is for, but hey, you know, whatever you're interested in doing. So in addition to this just ad hoc browse version of my data, I also have the ability from within Synapse to create an external table. And what this external table is me extracting the information that I have from my data lake and putting it into a table. This isn't a real table. This is a logical table. So of course I can select top 100 rows off of it and run that. And notice this is using my database. And when I loaded this up, I made sure to put all of my headers in here so I knew what I was talking about. But I can also create different subsections of my data that is out there. For example, I created this to just say cities in New York so that I have a smaller subset of my data to work with. And this is a logical table that is put on top of my data lake. So I can create a logical database on top of it and work with that, do different kinds of analysis with it. If I wanted to perhaps use a selection of my data and put that into a pipeline, I can do that as well. What I would do with that is I would select it in a Spark notebook. Bam, I can call that from within my integration. So I also can create views of my data. Creating views of my data is so simple that I'm just going to have to do one here. If I wanted to create a view out of this is how hard this is. Now, I'm probably going to want to go through and put all the column headers on there so that I have the real number here and do that before I create a view out of that. But I can go ahead and create this view, which I'm just going to do for sake of argument, although we'll agree that I need to fix that. And I can run that, so then I would have another view. But oh, I'm in master database. Excuse me, I have to be in my actual database here. So run that. But I've already done that, so I do have a better looking view here. So this would be the one that I've created for my customers. And this is a view that I've created for my sales. And this is just looking at the ID out of this. So it's just a smaller version of it. And of course, to get this, I just need to refresh it. And I can just see the new one that I created. So I can easily create views on top of my data, analyze my data, and I'm doing all of this on flat files. The other thing that I can do is I can go ahead and create pipelines. And with this pipeline, what I did is I created the ability to take a CSV file and put that to Parquet. The reason that you might want to do that is the Parquet file format is compressed. It actually does something similar to what a column store index does within SQL Server. So it's it decreases the amount of processing time and space that you would use for development. So I just created a real quick pipeline that just does that. And here's my source. My source is my data lake in my employee table. And then if we go back here, we can look at my sink, which is my destination, and it is a Parquet file that I've created in a subdirectory. Pretty easy to do. This took me all of like 10 minutes, and ta-da, I've got a Parquet file. Again, this is, and I can go ahead and run this. Of course, I can just do a debug run. When I do a debug run, this actually spins up another Spark cluster called an integration runtime. And you can create different versions of integration runtimes so that you can make your pipeline code go faster. And I can also add a trigger. Of course, those of you familiar with ADF know that this means that I can do this on a scheduled basis, and I certainly can schedule these whenever I want to. And I can also take a look at monitoring them and then managing the things as well. You can see here's my job. This is what it succeeded, and you've got different options here. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to take, and in addition to all this, I have the ability to create notebooks. And I have here a notebook for creating a Delta Lake within Synapse. So this is where the matching capability with Databricks comes in. So this is running to a Spark pool. And I'm running here, this was Spark SQL, but this here is PySpark. So I can change languages and then run different elements as well. So go ahead and run this. I don't know that my Spark cluster is available. And this is the part that's just like Databricks, as in I can write Spark code, execute it, create notebooks, and save them. So, and when it comes to manage, though, we're talking about one environment. This is what I see. Other people can have access to the same Synapse Analytics environment. So let's take a look now at Databricks. So within my Azure environment, naturally I've gone in and I have created a Databricks environment. Very simple to do as well. It doesn't really matter where you choose this to happen. Best place for it is where you happen to have your data. But after that, that's up to you. So this is what Databricks looks like. Obviously, you get into another environment. Both of these tools take you to an external area to be able to manage and run. I also have, let me make this a little bit bigger for you. I also have a notebooks area and workspaces. Here you can see that I can put elements into folders, organizing my information there, which is really pretty nice. I could have this set up to share with a number of different users. It shows me the most recent ones. If I go here to home, there's documentation, release notes, getting started information. Again, really good information to help you getting started with Databricks. Their documentation is excellent. And not only do they have the standard version, but of course they have the Azure version as well, which includes specifics on how to connect to different Azure resources from within Databricks. You can manage all of your clusters within here. I have 2 different clusters created. You can see here that this is going to set to terminate after 90 minutes of activity. I can go ahead and start that, which I wanted to do earlier. I have the ability to create jobs, and these jobs are very similar to pipelines within Synapse, as in I can create a job that runs different Spark elements and schedule that to run whenever. I will say that the event logic that is contained within Databricks, not the same as what you would see within your Synapse / ADF environment, where they do better events actually than I think this does. You can also, this is kind of a recent development in the Databricks environment. You can manage your machine learning models within here. I don't happen to have any in here. So you can use this as a model management. This is using MLlib to do that. You can also add different databases to it, in addition to creating a cluster for accessing your tables. And the other element that it has that's really kind of cool is if I go up here, I can bounce back to the Azure portal and I can click on my workspace. This is where I see the different console settings. So I can look at my user settings, and then I can look at the administration settings, and we're going to go ahead and look at groups. So we've got different groups of people that we manage within here versus externally within Synapse. Looking at storage, where you can purge or cluster logs, looking at your access control, any kinds of advanced scripts that you might have, or global initialization as well. The other thing that you can use here is different partner integrations. So you could automatically get information from these elements into your Delta Lake, so that you can use them within there. And this also integrates directly into DevOps, so that I can go ahead and make sure that I've got everything into source control. So that's kind of a high level overview of both products. Let's talk more about some of the specifics that are only available in one versus another. So in Synapse integration, your Azure Data Factory environment, that's only in Synapse. So if you've got a lot of people who already know ADF and you want to incorporate Python with it, that's what it's got. It's got data warehousing. There's no functional equivalent to that within Databricks. T-SQL, you can write T-SQL against flat files. That's obviously something that is not in Databricks. It's got Azure ML support, so that you can integrate tightly with Synapse by calling AutoML, going back and forth into the environments, writing the code that would work in Azure ML with Synapse. And you can also integrate it into Power BI. I didn't get a chance to show that today, but if you go to my website at desertisleSQL.com, I do have an example about how you can integrate Power BI into Synapse. All right, so talking about the integration, it's the same code as Azure Data Factory. So definitely you want to check that out, see how easy it is to work. And the code runs in Spark as well. It uses integrated runtimes. You can increase the capacity of that integrated runtime so that your stuff will run faster. And you can incorporate the notebooks that you might create in Python, as well as the persisted tables like the ones that I showed you. You can include those as part of your pipelines, part of your integration. So once you've done all of your selecting, you're like, cool, I'm going to put this in my pipeline. And I've done all that in SQL. And so you might find this kind of environment to be more friendly if you're not all in Python. It's got data warehousing. So this is a new version of SQL DW. It's got high performing access to big data. The functional equivalent to this is Delta Lake. And honestly, there's just no comparison. I mean, this is a real data warehouse that is designed to handle large data sets, integrate directly into reporting applications, and provide the quick managed access to that you would expect with a data warehouse. You can use your compute to scale that up and down. All of your standard data warehousing, that's only in Synapse. Synapse also is the only one that's got T-SQL. This is helpful for those persisted SQL queries, your querying of your flat files. It's really helpful to examine your data that you've got within your data lake with SQL. I mean, why not? It's just the language that more people know. And you can create logical databases on top of your data lake. And one of the great reasons for doing this is once you've got a logical database, you can persist that and use that, say, to backend Power BI. Great use case for using this. And you can even use Management Studio to connect to these logical databases that you have created within Synapse. So Azure ML support, that is directly used to manage ML components. Databricks is using part of open source Spark ML to manage models instead. It includes the auto ML functionality, which means that you have the ability to use that function to have it pick algorithms for you. Really kind of great. I do have a talk on that on YouTube. You can go check that out. So you can use machine learning to pick the best machine learning algorithm. And hey, that's cool. And you can use a SQL pool for that different source within machine learning as well. The last thing that's only in Synapse is Power BI integration. So exploratory analysis, incorporating a workspace for Power BI reporting, and so that you can integrate it directly into Synapse. So you've got a lot of different options that you've got there for your Power BI integration that you will probably find really helpful. Your Power BI license is not included, though, within Synapse. That is a completely separate component. And it's not licensed through Synapse. So, bring your own license if you want to do this. And the idea, Microsoft is, of course, working on this product because it's still in preview. But one of the questions that I saw that was in a forum that Microsoft hosted recently on Synapse is they asked if Power BI data transformations would be available like Power Query, and they're looking to incorporate that as well. So that's kind of a neat thing. So as far as only in Databricks, would you find the ability to do DevOps support? So I know that I've talked to clients, and to be honest, this is a bit of a deal breaker because people say, well, what do you mean there's no source control? This is something that is very important in your environments. I know Hamish has got a talk later during Summit all about, DevOps and integration and CI/CD and, controlled integration and change development. And so you're going to want to check that out if you don't already know about the importance of DevOps in your environment. And it's in Databricks and it's not in Synapse. One of the other things that they have is also a proprietary version of Spark. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's faster because they made it faster versus the open source version, which is why they created Databricks so that they could do that. They have different integrations. We took a look when the short demo that I gave of Databricks at the integrations that they have with other products so that you can bring those into a Delta Lake and automatically integrate them. That's a pretty cool feature to be able to add data very quickly if you're using those specific applications. And then the last thing that they have that is not available is a difference in compute resources. So only in Databricks, change integration, change data capture, the ability to add your notebooks to GitHub or Azure DevOps, huge. That's a very important thing. I'm not going to minimize that in any way, shape, or form. And this allows you to develop, do dev, test, and prod, all that good stuff, because you've got that integration. The other thing that is so nice is project management. I mean, you saw how many different notebooks and SQL queries that I have in there, and to have them only in one giant pile, you're going to have to get real creative with your naming for organizing, and it's just not going to be nice. The environment of having folders is huge, because if you're working with teams of people, it doesn't take very long for you to have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of different notebooks, and finding them gets to be hard. I have some questions about that I saw here about, can you run your SQL against clusters in a SQL language in data cell in Databricks? Yes, that's true. You definitely can do that. But it's ANSI SQL, not Spark SQL. Excuse me, it's ANSI SQL, not T-SQL. And you can do that within Synapse as well. So that's a commonality between the two of them. So will DevOps be incorporated in Synapse in the future since it's already in Data Factory? Yes, Microsoft has said it is on that it is on the roadmap, and they said that prior to Synapse going GA, it will have integration, but it doesn't today. So that is going to happen. It has not happened yet. So I'll answer the question about the external tables versus views. For security, I will say there's no difference, but I'll get into a little bit more detail with that. And Databricks has proprietary Spark. And according to Databricks, they were at least 5 times faster than open source Spark running on AWS. I unfortunately did not find a comparison to Synapse. They don't have one out yet, but it is designed to run faster. So, and that is, you will see that, especially if you're looking at machine learning or very large data jobs. The Databricks runtime is different. That means your code's different. So if you are thinking, well, I'll just move to Synapse at some point and I'll just copy my code over. No, because there's a lot of it that is actually proprietary, especially the stuff that is referring to delta length. So it won't straight port. It's the code's slightly different, just enough so that it won't work, which is really kind of annoying. In addition to the proprietary Spark, you also have those GPU enabled clusters. So you have graphical processing units that are being used for your compute as well. So they not only do the integrations that Databricks has that are different, you can also integrate with other UIs. So if you think, well, yeah, I'm not real crazy about that Databricks interface, you can bring your own. If you're coding a lot in R and you want to use RStudio and with Databricks, no problem. You can use Databricks Connect and connect to anything you want. You can connect to Visual Studio and develop Visual Studio for Databricks. You don't have to use the environment if you don't wish to. It's got that partner integration to model management and again, sharing of notebooks. The ability for 2 people to work on the same thing is huge. I'll answer the questions that you have there in a little bit. I'm looking on a wall. I definitely will get to them. And also the Delta Lake integrations. The Delta Lake integrations are much tighter. It has better integrations, the partner integrations for model management, and also, you know, integrating straight into a Delta Lake. You cannot use Delta Lake if you are doing ad hoc SQL querying. You can use them only from within the Spark environment within Synapse. So those GPU computes provides the ability to increase compute without adding clusters. Again, it's a performance increase, and they add clustering and power. So, question, which is the best fit? Well, someone says, I have a question that says, when is a Spark job better than classic ETL? And when is classic ETL better than a Spark job? So here's the thing. There are a lot of ETL jobs that can be done very well within ADF. If you want to do something simple, if you're just moving your data from a lower, from a raw area, and you want to maybe add some dates onto it, maybe add additional reference, that is so easy to do in ADF. I don't see why you would need to do a Python thing for that. It's, if you just want to say, move it, take a couple of fields out, add a couple fields in, join, bam, you can do that in ADF in minutes. It's not the same as Python. However, if you've got some XML that you got to parse through, I'm going to probably want to do that in Python because it doesn't handle that very well within ADF. So that is something that you're gonna that it's better to do. I know people that choose to do all of their ETL within Python. So as personal preference, I wouldn't, because I don't think that you need to go to all that additional effort, and it does take longer. So data warehousing, again, that's a Synapse thing, but Databricks has the latest Spark stuff. Hopefully that's going to come soon to Synapse, but it's not there now. The languages of support are different. Databricks has R, Synapse has .NET. And this is kind of funny. Microsoft is better supporting the open source environment, and Databricks is not. So yay, Microsoft for their open source support. I just find that kind of funny. But you can use both. So you can call a Databricks job from within Synapse. So if you are using the ADF functionality, the integration functionality, you can call Databricks from within there. You can use Databricks if you really feel that you need the speed for targeted machine learning tasks, because it is very good at machine learning because of the additional compute capabilities. And with its proprietary version. So you may find that your data science is done in Databricks, and the completed model may be called from a pipeline within Synapse. You can use both. You don't have to use just one or just the other. And frankly, at this point, Databricks has the edge for machine learning. Use Synapse if you want to do a data warehouse. Spark doesn't, that's not in Databricks. So, you could be doing all that there. You can create those data lakehouses with serverless, so that you can do the things that you need quickly with a T-SQL environment, and develop data lakehouses, data on top of your flat files, and then just use those within Power BI. So in all, it's which one's best fit for your environment. These are the key factors that I think today are going to make your decision. And in answer to your question is, that was asked here, was DevOps, is it going to be incorporated in the future? Yes, but it's not there today. So since it's not there today, if you're making a decision today, whoops, then you are going to be using Databricks. Supported language, existing skill set. If you've got a lot of .NET developers that want to do .NET and Spark, then you probably want to look at Synapse. If you have a whole bunch of people who are very comfortable and familiar with R and want to continue writing R for Spark, Databricks. How do you want to do integration? Do you want to write all of your ETL in Python or not? How does your company want to do that? Data analysis of flat files. Do you care? Is that important to you? It's not something that is done in Databricks. That's basically write your code, do it that way. It is in Synapse. Spark performance. If you want the highest performing Spark that is available out there, that's Databricks. If you want the overall environment so that all of your entire data is managed in one place, from your structured data to your unstructured data, so you have a data warehouse and unstructured data all in one place, that's Synapse. So that's it depends part of the conversation, but I hope that you think about these points when you're determining what is the best environment for me at my company when making your decision. So just to wrap this up, we talked about the common components of both Azure Synapse Analytics and Azure Databricks. We detailed some of the feature differences between the two, and we reviewed which is important in your environment. And I want to say, here's my contact information. I'm on Twitter quite a bit, so that's a great place to just grab me for a quick question. Send me an email. I'd be happy to answer the other questions that you have, the ones that I haven't gotten to yet. And thank you very much for attending. So with that, hey, Rodney, let's start answering all these questions so that we can get people's questions answered about the two products.
Excellent. That was really good. Thanks. So there were two questions that came up, one of which you've just answered, which was how do we get in touch with you for further questions? Just giving out your contact details. And the other one was the slide deck. Will you be making that available?
That's a past thing. So they'll be available where the other ones are. So
yeah, because sorry, with the app, it's interesting because the ones that are pre-recorded, the slides are with them live. So
I don't know. So look
we
later.
are trying
and go ahead.
Sorry, we're trying to find out the answer behind the scenes.
Okay. I'm seeing a couple of other questions. It's like, what's the difference in the code between proprietary Spark and actual Spark? Kara, let me answer that question for you. The syntax is different. So that when you are, say, accessing data lake, the commands are different. And that means that you can't port the code over. It does the same things, but not the same way. What are the pros and cons of using external tables and views in general regarding security information, security implementations? Eric, that's up to you. You can set whatever security you want. So there's no security difference. James Serra has a blog that he talked about this, and he said that he thought that views were highly better performant. So check out jamesserra.com to get the specifics on that. When is a Spark job better than classic ETL and vice versa? When is classic Spark better than a Spark job? Depends on the complexity of the ETL that you're doing and the familiarity with the people on your team with the different tools. So again, parsing XML, gosh, that's a real pain to do in ADF. So I would pick Python for that. It also depends on how skilled people are with the different tools. Eric, would it be reasonable that if you chose Synapse to call Databricks and paste the Spark capabilities in Synapse to take advantage of the Databricks features, would they be hard to work with or integrate together? No, they wouldn't. Because right now you can integrate Databricks with the ADF functionality, and it's not difficult to do. You can actually even use Databricks clusters and call that from within Azure Machine Learning. So Microsoft is definitely interested in supporting Databricks from within the Azure environment. So it's not difficult to integrate them. Naturally, the integration is tighter if they're all in one package. But if you want to take advantage of the machine learning functionalities, which I think give Databricks a bit of an edge in that area, you could definitely do that in Databricks and call it. So. Has there been conversation about Databricks incorporating Python or other languages aside from R? So Databricks also supports, I'm sorry, I didn't give them the full props that they were due. They support Python, R, Scala, and Java. So those languages are all supported within Databricks, Kara. Sorry if I was misleading. I was just talking about differences. In Synapse, they support Scala, .NET, and Python. They do not support Java. So Java is not as popular, so I didn't mention it, but more languages than Python are supported. I'm just kind of biased, sorry. You can definitely run, using magic commands, you can run your cluster data in Databricks, but you can also do that within Synapse. That's just a Spark functionality. Spark SQL is fully supported in both implementations. So either way, that's not really a thing. So are there any other questions? I hope more people have stuff they'd like to ask. I'm here for another 10 minutes. So anything you'd like to ask, feel free. I have production familiarity with both applications. So I actually have implemented Azure Synapse in production. as well as Databricks. So I can kind of trade off with that. I will say that I miss source control. And I'm looking forward to the day that I will be on Twitter and writing a blog post saying, yay, source control is in Synapse, because I know they're working on it. I'm sure it's hard and it's not there yet. So there's a lot of things planned. I see these two products kind of like Tableau and Power BI. There's definitely a lot of resources that Microsoft is putting towards Synapse to make it a better product. It's got a lot in it, as you saw from the demo that I did. So there's just a lot that they've got to manage and incorporate within the application. So anything else, Rodney?
Not yet. There's just a comment from Betsy saying very helpful and only Ginger. You're evaluating both at the moment.
Good deal.
I'm not seeing any new questions.
Really looking forward to any other comments that you might have. Again, if you can't think of anything right now and you think about it later on, hit me up on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm just not on there as much. But I'd be happy to connect with you and answer any other questions that you happen to have about, either of the two products and integration, et cetera.
A couple of questions. Questions are coming through now. Cara, which product do you prefer, or do you prefer a hybrid approach?
Cara, today I would prefer a hybrid approach because of the functionality between the two. I like a lot of the functionality that Synapse has. I like source control, and I like the way you can organize things a little bit better. I also think that half of that's going to get fixed. The functionality part about Databricks being faster, that's something that they've got built into the product. So if it has to be done really, really fast, and I'm thinking of machine learning here, then might use it for that task. Have I migrated any databases from, like, say, Oracle to Synapse? No, I have not migrated an Oracle database to Synapse, which is, again, it's the former Azure SQL Data Warehouse. I do know some people who have done that, though, and there's a lot of information out there. Now that they changed the names and they're calling it, Synapse instead of Azure SQL Data Warehouse, you'd have to look for that name if you're on the internet to find out more information for it. As far as how long that would take, that has to do with how much manipulation that you are doing to the model. I've done where you've created it from scratch. It's very infrequent that when people go to port a database over, they don't want to tweak something. And that's, of course, what takes a lot of time. The best place to tool or learn to use Spark. So Spark is a library that is incorporated in different languages. I moved my book. Hold on one sec. I would get this if you're interested in doing Spark with Python prop. It's O'Reilly. It's Spark, the definitive guide. I highly recommend it for learning Spark. You're also going to want to learn Python, or you could, use Scala. Scala is used quite often with Spark, but I would recommend using Python because it's a very ubiquitous language. And if you are looking at various courses with Python, look for Python and Spark. You said the organization of stuff in Synapse is not so good. Any plans for Microsoft to fix that? I'm not aware, honestly, of anything on the roadmap that has to do with folder organizations. Some things that I am aware of that have been made public, but I don't know anything about the ability for organizing the environment from within the SQL environment. Thoughts on Synapse versus Snowflake? Oh, well, it's gotten, okay, we'll put this way up on that Synapse versus Snowflake. I was a part of and know a number of other people who did POC, proof of concept comparisons between Azure Azure DW and Snowflake. And I don't know anybody who picked Azure DW after that. But they did do a lot of performance improvements to it once it became Synapse. But I don't know of anybody who's done and I've not done a POC comparison between Synapse and Snowflake. Snowflake is very good. So I don't know current state which one would win. I'd have to do that myself to know. Why didn't MS enhance Databricks rather than create Synapse? Well, probably because Matej Zachariah, who owns Synapse, wasn't interested in selling to Microsoft. And Microsoft doesn't own it, so they have absolutely no rights to do that. So they had to create their own product. The other thing too is that they weren't interested in just being what's called YASI, which is YASI, which is just another Spark interface. What they were looking for is to building an environment so you have all of your data structured and unstructured. So not just, hey, let's do Spark better, which is really the focus of Databricks. I'm not seeing the value of Power BI integration, and how is it different from opening another browser tab and navigating to a Power BI workspace? Is there more to it than that? All right, I can see your point. You could say that how valuable is it to incorporate Power BI from within Synapse? But you could also use it as a data analysis tool similar to what you're doing with T-SQL. If you don't find that valuable, hey, no harm, no foul in that. So that is what there is to it. So I see actually more value in Power BI with using the data lake and using that as a data store. Tim, I'm just building out our Azure space. I'm familiar with Databricks already, but with a blank slate as a new company, is Synapse worth a build out to grow into? We'll be creating data ingestion framework, and then we'll have some data science projects in the next 12 to 24 months. I'd say yes. And the reason why is that I do not think that having all of your ETL within Python offers the ease of maintenance and development. I just can't see doing that all in Python. I know people who do. I just not a fan of it. And if I was doing this, from scratch, I would probably aim for that direction because I have more options. Whereas if you just go Databricks, then I think you're missing out on some features that are helpful and relevant. If you're just doing machine learning and you just have data science, I could see why you might think, well, I just might do Databricks. But if you're looking to do more than that, incorporate more than that, I really think you ought to look at Synapse.
There's 2 minutes left.
Pardon?
There are 2 minutes left.
2 minutes left. All right. Well, I can definitely answer one more question in 2 minutes. What is the size, the biggest data warehouse you've implemented in Synapse? What is the total size of data that's being refreshed in a data warehouse on a daily basis? Okay, so if you're talking about data warehouse functionality of Synapse, you're talking about the Azure data warehouse application that's been around for years. So I know of databases within that environment. They're in the petabytes. So it can handle extremely large data sets. Total amount of data that's being refreshed in a data warehouse, one that I know of, like 0.5 terabyte daily, because that's what it's designed for, just massively huge amounts of data. And that's not, the data warehousing components in Synapse are not new. They've been, Microsoft has implemented them and used them. They just improved upon them when they moved it to Synapse. So with that, I think we are out of questions. Tim, hopefully I answered your question well enough. If not, please, again, contact me so that I can answer your questions that you might have a little bit later. And thank you very much for attending.
Hello again. I hope you've been enjoying everything the PASS Virtual Summit has to offer. I wanted to take a minute to remind you that all of the conference sessions and content will be available for 12 months on demand, so you'll be able to catch up on any of the sessions you missed at any time throughout the year. You can also visit the exhibit hall on demand after the conference has ended and leave a question for our sponsors and exhibitors. And now, back to your PASS Virtual Summit program.
PASS is a data professional's chance to be part of something bigger than themselves.
To be a part of a community of like-minded people.
The PASS community connects data professionals around the world
who are driven by a love of data, learning, and making connections.
PASS started over 20 years ago, leading the data industry through innovation.
We've now reached the next phase in our evolution.
PASS Pro membership.
As a PASS Pro member, you gain access to world-class educational opportunities developed by top experts in partnership with Microsoft.
It will take you beyond what you know today and equip you with what you need to know to stay current and progress in your career.
The PASS educational series within this membership takes you on a path of learning about key topics that are relevant right now.
There are assessments to help pinpoint where you should start and tests to demonstrate and check your learning along the way.
Being a PASS Pro member allows you to access a personalized training record for all of your activities across all the PASS offerings.
So you can track your progress and share it with your manager or use it to impress future employers.
Your PASS Pro membership also comes with networking opportunities.
To connect with other Pro members who love the same things you do or have the answers you need.
PASS Pro members also get perks like advanced registration and discounts to the annual PASS Summit and exclusive offers from our PASS partners.
Unlock this amazing opportunity and help support your data community.
Welcome to the next phase of PASS.
Welcome to PASS Pro.